Okay, so picture this. A full Windows PC. I don't mean the screen or a tablet, but the actual, box doing all the work. And it fits right here, easily in the palm of your hand. How can something that small possibly have any real power, let alone enough juice to run like 3 separate 4K
It
displays?
really does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it? We're sort of trained to think bigger means more powerful in computing.
Totally. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're looking into a really fascinating piece of tech that one of you listeners shared. We're unpacking the MINIX Neo Z97 Mini PC, and we're basing this on a review by Jack Wallen over at ZDNet.
Yeah, and our goal here, our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. We want to pull out the key takeaways from that ZDNet review for you. Understand what this little machine actually does in the real world, according to the testing described, figure out its limits, and, well, see why someone might actually want one.
Exactly. It's about cutting through everything else and getting straight to the useful bits from that source. And honestly, I'm pretty excited to explore this because a $200 Windows PC powering 3 4K monitors, that just sounds like science fiction. Okay, let's unpack this little marvel.
Well, the reviewer, Jack Wallen, he starts off pretty skeptical in the article. He mentions he's looked at other tiny PCs before, and a lot of them felt, well, underpowered, barely good enough for just basic web surfing. So he went into testing this MINIX Neo Z97 pretty cautiously.
Which makes total sense. You see this thing, it measures what? 88 by 42 millimeters. That's like 3.5 inches square, maybe an inch and a half tall. And it weighs only about half a pound. Your first thought is probably, yeah, right, that's not running Windows 11 properly. It feels like asking a hamster to pull a truck.
Well, a very determined hamster, maybe. But interestingly, the review points out that he specifically chose not to put a lighter OS like Linux on it, which you might normally do for less powerful hardware. He stuck with the Windows 11 that came pre-installed. He wanted to see how it handled Microsoft's latest OS, acknowledging that Windows 11, isn't exactly light on resources.
Good call. Windows 11 definitely needs some horsepower. So, okay, keeping that in mind, how did this super small device actually do with like normal everyday stuff?
This is where the big surprise came in, according to the review. He ran it through his typical daily workflow. We're talking installing software like LibreOffice, doing some image editing with GIMP.
Okay, yeah, standard Office suite, photo editing.
Right. Plus web browsing with a bunch of tabs open, watching YouTube videos, streaming music on Spotify. Yeah, the usual.
That really is the core stuff most people do day to day, isn't it? That's not some weird edge case. That's the real test for a daily driver computer.
Exactly. And the review says the MINIX Neo Z97 handled these common tasks far better than expected. That's a direct quote. And what's more, things like LibreOffice and websites apparently loaded as fast as they would on the reviewer's main desktop PC.
Wow, okay, that's genuinely impressive feedback from the source. So for checking email, writing docs, maybe wrestling with spreadsheets, a bit of light photo work, and obviously watching cat videos, it sounds like this tiny box handles the basics really smoothly. Kind of makes you wonder why we have these huge towers taking up space under our desks sometimes.
That certainly seems to be the main point regarding its performance for standard productivity. It really did surprise the reviewer compared to his initial low expectations based on the size and price.
Okay, so it punches above its weight for the daily grind. Got it. But every machine hits a wall somewhere, right? Especially something this small. You're not trying to tell me this thing is suddenly going to run Cyberpunk 2077 at max settings or render complex 3D models.
No, absolutely not. And this is where the source material helps set realistic expectations for you. While it's great for general use, Jack Wallen's review is quite clear about its limitations, especially when you throw more demanding tasks at it.
Okay, so what kind of heavy lifting did he try that made it, sweat a bit?
The specific example given in the review is running something called AllMMSD. These are tools for doing local AI workloads, running AI models directly on the machine. And he notes that this particular task pushed the Z97 to its limits.
Local AI. Okay, yeah, that sounds like a kind of thing that would stress out most systems, never mind a tiny PC like this.
It really does. The source explains the local AI processing can just, well, gobble up system resources. It needs serious computational power, often relying heavily on a graphics card, a GPU. The reviewer points out the Z97 uses integrated Intel UHD graphics. It's enough to drive those displays and handle normal tasks, but it just doesn't have a dedicated GPU for heavy lifting like AI calculations.
Right, that makes perfect sense. It's built for connectivity, driving screens, general stuff, not for the kind of number crunching a dedicated graphics card does.
Precisely. And just to kind of underline the point, The reviewer even mentions that running OMAPSD is demanding even for his main desktop PC, which he calls an absolute beast of a computer, a System 76 Thelio. So the fact that a tiny sub-$250 machine struggles with that same task isn't really a criticism, it just shows what it wasn't designed for.
Yeah, okay. So powerful for its size and price, definitely. But you need to know what its job is. It's not meant for those super intensive tasks that even challenge high-end systems. It's about matching the tool to the job, based only on what the source found.
Exactly right. It's a specific tool for specific uses.
Let's zoom in a bit more on the physical stuff, the tech specs inside this little box. We keep saying how small it is, fits in your palm, half a pound. What else did the source highlight? What's under the hood?
Well, besides those tiny dimensions, 88 by 88 by 42 millimeters, the review lists some key specs. It's got an Intel processor N97 inside. It comes with 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5X memory, which is pretty fast RAM.
12 gigs is quite a bit for this size, actually.
It is, and a 512 gigabyte M.2 NVMe SSD. That's the fast solid-state storage for Windows and your files. Plus, it has modern wireless stuff, Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2.
Those are solid specs, especially the RAM and that fast SSD. But what about ports? Anything physically stick out as unusual or noteworthy for something that's compact?
Yes, actually. Jack Wallen specifically calls out that it has two RJ45 Ethernet jacks. That's pretty uncommon on mini PCs this small. Usually you get one, maybe none. So that gives you some nice networking options.
Hold on, 2 gigabit Ethernet ports on this tiny thing. Seriously, okay, that's kind of wild.
Yeah.
But the feature that really grabbed you, the one that was kind of the headline for the article, is the display support. How many screens can it handle again? And what resolution?
All right, this is arguably the star feature highlighted in the review. The MINIX Z97 can drive 3 4K displays, all at the same time. It's got the ports for it. 2 HDMI 2.1 ports and 1 DisplayPort 1.4.
3 4K monitors. From a computer, you could literally hide behind one of them. That's just an incredible amount of screen real estate for productivity. Imagine a trading setup or complex design work or just having everything visible at once without alt-tabbing constantly, all driven by this little silent box.
It really does shift your perception of what a mini PC can do for, serious desktop work. And another surprising physical thing the reviewer mentioned was the noise, or rather the lack of it.
Oh, really? Because usually you cram performance into a small space and you get fans that sound like tiny vacuum cleaners trying desperately to keep it cool.
Apparently not here. Jack Wallen specifically said he never heard the internal fan kick in during his testing, not even when it was working hard during the initial Windows 11 upgrade process. He described it as completely silent, unless you literally put your ear right next to it. And even then, he could just barely hear a faint whir.
Okay, so silent operation, plus driving 3 4K displays, plus handling daily stuff quickly. That whole combination, based on the source, sounds incredibly appealing.
It definitely paints a picture of a very capable, yet very unobtrusive computer. Which brings us nicely to the final takeaway from the review.
Right, the so what question.
Yeah.
Based on everything Jack Wallen found, who is this mini PC actually for? What's the bottom line value here? If you're thinking about a new computer, what does this all mean for you?
Well, the reviewer concludes that, while you might initially think these tiny PCs are just for niche things like digital signs or maybe tucked away as a media center, the MINIX Z97 kind of breaks that mold. He genuinely seems to believe it's powerful enough to be someone's main desktop computer for everyday use.
So not just a secondary gadget, but it could realistically replace a big desktop tower for a lot of people's actual day-to-day computing.
That's the assessment in the source material, that it can be your primary machine and handle it with ease and grace. And then you look at the price. The source states it was selling for $217.40 on Amazon when the review was written.
$217. For a full Windows 11 PC that, according to the review, handles daily tasks fast, is silent, has good connectivity with 2 Ethernet ports, and runs 3 4K screens. That feels almost too cheap for what you're getting.
The reviewer definitely thought so. He literally calls it a steal at that price. The source really emphasizes that combination. The surprisingly good daily performance, that unique triple 4K display feature, the tiny silent design, and the very low cost. It adds up to exceptional value, apparently.
It really does challenge that old idea that you need a big, possibly noisy, and definitely more expensive machine to get real work done, especially if you like having multiple monitors.
It suggests a different way to think about desktop setups, for sure.
Okay, let's quickly wrap up this deep dive into the MINIX Z97 Mini PC, all based on that ZDNet review. We found out that despite being incredibly small, like half a pound small, the source discovered it's surprisingly capable for everyday Windows 11 stuff. Handles office suites, web browsing, even some image editing pretty smoothly, according to the review.
Yeah, though it does have its limits.
Yeah?
It definitely struggled with really heavy tasks like local AI processing, mainly because it doesn't have a dedicated graphics card.
Mm.
But for its likely intended purpose, general productivity,
Yeah.
driving lots of screens, it seems to excel.
And physically, it's quite the package. It crams in useful things like those 2 Ethernet ports and the standout feature, driving 3 4K displays simultaneously over HDMI and DisplayPort, all while staying, according to the reviewer, remarkably silent.
And finally, the source concludes that for the price, around $207, it's fantastic value. Powerful enough for many people's daily computing needs, and especially good if you want a big multi-monitor setup without a big box.
So this deep dive, like all our deep dives, was really about boiling down that ZDNet review to give you the core insights, save you some reading time. If you're thinking about a mini PC or just curious about how much power you can get in a tiny package for under $250 these days, hopefully this gave you a clear picture of the MINIX Neo Z97's capabilities based strictly on that review.
And, based on the source's conclusion that this tiny, cheap device could be a daily desktop replacement and handle multiple high-res screens,
Mm-hmm.
it does raise an interesting question for you to think about. Could little machines like this eventually make traditional desktop towers obsolete for most users? Or could we see a future where most multi-monitor setups are powered by these tiny hidden computers?
Definitely something to chew on. We really hope you enjoyed joining us for this deep dive. If you did find it useful, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the deep dive. Supporting the show helps us keep digging into interesting sources like this one for you.
And related to that, the source article we talked about, like a lot of online reviews, might use affiliate links. So if you happen to be interested in the MINIX PC or other things mentioned, clicking links from wherever you found this deep dive might help support us at no extra cost to you, just following that common online model. It's another way to help out if you find these discussions valuable.
Absolutely. And we always want to hear from you. What topics are you curious about? What source material do you want us to tackle next? Please drop your suggestions for future deep dives in the comments section or wherever you're listening or watching. Let us know what you want unpacked.
Yeah, your ideas really shape what we explore.
Thanks again for joining us for this look into the surprisingly potent world of the palm-sized PC. Stay tuned for our next exploration.